The Coach Curl podcast is brought to you by Think and Grow Business, the home of the Think and Grow Business Mastermind. If you're serious about growing your business, get serious and join a mastermind group today. Find out more at thinkandgrowbusiness.com.au.
Hey there, it's Coach Curl here, and welcome to episode 187 of the Coach Curl podcast, Turning Pain into Gain. Now, this is part of the content that I share when I'm working with leaders in a leadership mastermind or a leadership roundtable. This is the content that you'll hear today is from a Facebook Live that I did over on the Think and Grow Business Facebook page, sharing this content via my followers and the people that follow the Think and Grow Business page, and of course my clients. So this was an audio sharing some of the content from one of my leadership roundtables. It's called Turning Pain into Gain, and it's absolutely relevant in today's world. So after our intro, you'll get Coach Curl delivering Turning Pain into Gain.
Way to go, guys. Way to go. Keep it going. Good job, guys. All right, Paul. I see you. Finish on. Coach Curl.
Now, we start this particular leadership roundtable with a quote, and we start most of our leadership roundtables with a quote. And this one really resonates and should really resonate with you at this particular time, because the quote is really quite simple. It's from a person called John McDonnell, and the quote is, "Every problem introduces a person to themselves." So every problem introduces a person to themselves. And it's really important that we don't just take that at face value. We just think about these quotes and we actually look to where is the meaning in this? Where is the real meaning to this? And to me, what that quote does for me is every problem introduces a person to themselves. So what that's helping me understand is the way that I react, the way that I respond, the way that I deal with problems as they come up in my life, in my business, in my career. The way that I deal with those problems, I'm introducing myself back to me. So if I react in a negative way, that's teaching me something about me. If I'm reacting, and most humans will react in some level of negativity when they are confronted with a problem. But to be able to shift and pivot it within our mind and look at, well, what's my opportunity here? What's my learning? Where's my growth opportunity? It helps us actually take a problem and learn from it and grow. And that's really, really important for us. So every problem introduces a person to themselves. And that's really important to understand from our own perspective, because every time we are confronted with a problem, we are going to be introducing ourselves. And one of the challenges that we face is often when we face a problem, we'll react the same way, time and time and time again. And that is ultimately not serving us in the way that we should be. So how do you respond to bad experiences? Do you explode in anger? Do you shrink into yourself emotionally? Do you detach yourself from the experience as much as possible? Or do you, like many others, just try to ignore it? So John McDonnell once said, every problem introduces a person to themselves. What an insight. Each time we encounter a painful experience, we get to know ourselves a little bit better. Now, the concept of pain is one that can stop us in our tracks, or it can cause us to make decisions that we would like to put off. And what we've seen during the COVID crisis is there was a lot of decision making that should have been done within businesses much earlier, but the COVID crisis actually forced us into action. So the crisis forced us to move, forced us to make a decision. And some of those decisions that we've held back on, that we've procrastinated about, have been brought to the fore because of the problem that we faced. Pain enables us to deal with issues that we would rather not face and make changes that make us feel uncomfortable. And I think that you would all be resonating with that at this particular moment in time. Pain prompts us to face who we are and where we are. But it's what we do with that that really defines who we are or what we become. So it's what we do with that experience that defines who we become. So what do I know about bad experiences? So one of the things that we know is that people will be separated when it comes in terms of a crisis. There'll be those that thrive under that particular environment, and there were those that will merely survive. Now, I believe firmly that it's the way that we deal with our problems and mistakes that enables us to either survive or we thrive. So we want to be able to deal with our problems and our mistakes in a way that helps us rather than hurts us. And when it comes to success, problems are a stepping stone along the way. So there's no smooth trajectory for success. We know that. A life of an entrepreneur is up and down, peaks and valleys. So problems are a stepping stone on the way to success. Yet, I've never heard anyone say, I love problems. I love problems. Send them my way. I've never known anyone that's jumping out of bed ready to face a problem. But the reality is, when we look back and we think about our lives and our businesses and our careers, often the greatest gains that you've made have come in the middle of pain. So the greatest gains that you've made has come from the middle of pain. So what do I know about bad experiences? Firstly, I know that everyone has them. So life is filled with ups and downs. We know that. The problem is that most of us, what we want is ups and ups and ups and ups. And we know that's not possible. We know that's not physically impossible. And I think it's pretty obvious that no one gets to escape bad experiences. We need to experience those problems. We need to experience a crisis. And one of the things that we should be thinking about whenever we're in that crisis is how can we do good when things turn bad? And so whether that's from a career, a business, or your own relationships, how can I do good when things turn bad? And just another quote, it may not be as deep as the other one that I shared, but we need to realize that some days we're going to be the pigeon, while other days we're going to be the statue. And think about that, because some of us out there may be feeling that we've just been too much of a statue during this particular crisis. So when we think about that, some days we're the pigeon, other days we're the statue. Now, we can do everything in our power to avoid negative experiences, can't we? But they've got a way to find us. And once again, there's a really cool quote in relation to this. I try to take life one day at a time, but lately several days have attacked me at once. And I know that there are so many people out there that are probably feeling that. It's just, we've got this culmination of stuff that's happening. So yes, I do try to live one day at a time, but lately there's just been a couple of days that have just ganged up on me. So no matter who you are, no matter where you live, no matter what you do or what your background is, you will have to deal with a bad experience. Expecting the world to treat you fairly just because you're a good person is a little like expecting the bull not to charge at you because you're a vegetarian, right? So there's a quote for everything. So expecting the world to treat you fairly just because you're a good person is a little like expecting the bull not to charge you because you're a vegetarian. And that was actually a quote from a television host and author, Dennis Holey. You have to be realistic. You have to be realistic when it comes to our expectations, because we will find, or bad experiences will find us, and they're going to be a factor in our life. The other thing that I know about bad experiences is that no one likes them, no one likes them. If, once again, Academy Award-winning actor Dustin Hoffman described what it was like for him and fellow actors in the early days of their career. If anyone had told us that we would be successful, we would have laughed in their face. We were anything but successful actors in the early days. I was a waiter, Gene Hackman was a mover, and Robert Duvall worked at the post office. We didn't dream of being rich and famous. We dreamed of finding a job. It was a time of terrible rejection, and we hated being rejected, as we all do. It got to the point that we used to leave our photos, our 8x10s, at the doors of casting agents, knock and run, just so we wouldn't be rejected face to face. It was so discouraging that I seriously considered quitting and becoming an acting teacher at a university. So no one likes bad experiences. And when we're in the middle of a bad experience, it seriously is painful. Seriously painful. Dustin Hoffman was seriously thinking about quitting an acting career because of those bad experiences. But if we manage the experience well, we can enjoy talking about it afterwards, and it becomes part of our story. It becomes part of who we are. It builds some of those resilient skills that we absolutely need in our lives, in our businesses, in our career. Now, the last thing that I know about bad experiences is that there are few people that will make a bad experience a positive experience. Now, life's difficulties do not allow us to stay the same. They move us. In a crisis, everything changes. The question is, which direction will we be moved? I'll ask that again. The question is, which direction will we be moved? Will it be forward or will it be backward? When we've had a bad experience, we do become better, or we can become bitter. So when we've had a bad experience, we can become better, or that we can become bitter. So will the experience limit us, or will the experience lead us to grow? Success in life comes from not holding a good hand. So for all you card players out there, you know this. Success in life comes not from holding a good hand, but in playing a poor hand well. When tough times come, many people don't respond well. Some seem to have the motto that I once saw on a bumper sticker: when the going gets tough, it's time to take a nap. When the going gets tough, it's time to take a nap. And in many ways, that's what we were advised to do. We're going to put things in hibernation, and we want you to ramp it up when it's all come back. But we know it's going to be, we can't do that. The world just doesn't go to sleep and then wake up exactly the way it was. This crisis has changed us in so many ways. And it really is a shame when we think about that, because when we learn to manage and use pain as a growth point, it becomes essential for us as a part of our journey. And you talk to any successful person, and they'll point to the hard times in their lives as key points in their journey. Key points in their journey, just as we should be now looking at what are those key learnings that we've taken away out of this crisis, and how can I use them to grow? If you're dedicated to growth, you must become committed to managing your bad experiences and your problems and your pain well. So when we start to then think about the different areas of where we can see pain, and this is John Maxwell's list of where he sees pain, because everyone has a pain file. You've got yours, I've got mine. I know what causes me pain. I may not have experienced the same pain or anything as traumatic as maybe what you have or others have had. But I've had, as with everyone else in the world, my share of failures and negative experiences. And here are a few that John has put together as part of his journey around that pain file. And I'm sure that when you hear from the world's leading expert in leadership, some of the areas that he's had some pain, it hopefully it'll bring some perspective in what you felt and what you've experienced. The first area is the pain of inexperience. Now, John expected instant success in his career, but stumbled often, and usually because of immaturity. He had to learn the concepts of patience, and he had to build and earn respect. And importantly, he had to learn how to influence to be able to experience ultimately what we would look at as being success. So immaturity led to inexperience, which led to real pain because the expectations was of instant success. He suffered the pain of incompetence. John's a fantastic speaker, a fantastic writer, and he acknowledges that for early in the piece, he did a lot of coaching and counseling, and he was terrible at it. He admits it. That forced him to reevaluate what he was going to do. And it was only through when, instead of trying to counsel people, he started to think about equipping people, was he ultimately able to reach the levels of success that he had. The pain of disappointment, we've all can deal with that. We've all lost loved ones. We've all lost that love of our life. We didn't get to date the girl that we wanted to at school, or whatever that looks like. We didn't get the promotion that we had. And in John's case, they were scheduled to adopt a son, but they lost that particular adoption and they were devastated. So as you would have been at the time, anyone who knows the experience of having children or adopting children and extending your family, you go through a lot of pain. You go through a lot of preparation. And when you lose that, you obviously feel some pain. The pain of conflict is a constant, I think, in everybody's life. And we can all do that. Where we fall out of alignment or disconnect with someone, I mean, that is seriously part of our pain. And once from John's experience, he took on, and John's a person of faith, and he took on some church congregations, and there were serious splits within that. Whenever you've got a split in a group, you feel the pain, and it's absolutely relevant. The pain of change, so he had to, as we all do, we all have to be agile and flexible and be productive when it comes to change. Every now and again, we've got to start over. Every now and again, we've got to restart a set. Every now and again, we've got to refresh what it is that we do. But when we form a productive relationship with change, it can really open up many opportunities that maybe we didn't see before. The pain of bad health, for those that experience bad health, John had a heart attack at 51. He's now 74. Yeah, he's 74. And having that heart attack at 51 was excruciating, but it was also a huge eye-opener for him. He immediately changed eating habits and brought into the practice of daily exercise. Now, once again, you can be really bitter around something like a heart attack, or it can be a wake-up call. And once again, there's a real opportunity there to think about what your perspective would have been in that particular case. Interestingly, the pain of hard decisions, wanting everyone to be happy and making tough decisions are incompatible with each other. I'll just go through that again. So wanting everyone to be happy and making tough decisions are incompatible. Good leadership is sometimes about disappointing people at a rate that they can stand. And it's about making those hard decisions that benefit the greater good and not necessarily sometimes the individual. So hard decisions are certainly a painful, and if we walk away from making those hard decisions, it will ultimately lead to more pain. The pain of financial loss, we know, is absolutely critical in this particular time. There are so many people that have been financially impacted, so many people that can't get past that aspect. They've worked to build their assets, they've worked to build their business, they've worked to build so many things, and then ultimately to lose financially out of a crisis of not of their doing has been some real pain that people have had to navigate through. Holding on to the pain's not going to hurt us, not going to help us, sorry. The pain of relationship losses, yeah. And once again, this is a really interesting one because sometimes we hang with people or we have friends or we have formed relationships with people who don't have the same desire as us to grow. So they don't have the same desire as us to grow. And that's, once again, we talk about hard decisions. That's an incredibly tough decision to do. But one of the things we need to be mindful of is our own growth trajectory, our own path of our own journey. And sometimes someone that was good for us in one aspect of our life, in one aspect of our journey, a high school friend, for example, it was probably great to be a high school friend, but if they deviate from a path that is unfamiliar or one that you're not wanting to be on, the pain of losing that relationship can often keep us in a place where we shouldn't be. So the pain of relationship losses. So as we develop new friendships, we learn to build relationships with people who want to grow and people that help us and join the journey. The pain of not being number one in one job I followed. This is from John. This is John's words. In one job, I followed a wonderful founding pastor who was greatly loved as a leader. For some people, I was never as loved or as respected as much as he was. And we've all faced that. We've all gone into jobs where the person before us was seen in some people's eyes potentially as the Messiah. And that pain of not being that number one can sometimes push us into that people-pleasing mode, which is not where we want to be. So when you're in a position like that, that teaches us humility. It really does. It teaches us humility. The pain of traveling. So, and that's for a lot of people. We have jobs, and well, at the moment, it's not for a lot of people. Traveling is a lot of fun, but when it's your job and you're traveling constantly and being away from the people that you love, there is some real pain involved in that. The pain of responsibility, there is our own personal responsibility here, but as well as who we lead and what we do in that respect. So leading organizations and having people depending on me as a leader has required, and once again, John's words, required John to think of others' well-being, continually looking at how I can keep my team engaged, how I can meet consistently demanding head deadlines. And that becomes tiring, but it's part of the pain that we accept in our journey of being, whether it's a manager or whether it's a business owner. We accept that responsibility. We need to have the ability to prioritize, and we need to have that self-discipline that keeps us on track. So that's John's pain file. And what have all these painful experiences taught him? And what it should teach us is that we should allow discomfort to be a catalyst in our development. We should allow discomfort to be a catalyst for our development, because that's really important. We should allow our discomfort to be a catalyst for our development. Growth is the best possible outcome is the best possible outcome from any sort of negative experience. So we should be looking to grow. So how do we do that? And I know that we've been on for a little bit, so I don't want to rush through it because this is where the gold is. So turning pain into gain, and this is what it's really about. We've got to look at choosing our own positive life stance. So life stance is a term that we use to describe a person's overall frame of reference, their set of attitudes, their assumptions and expectations that people hold about themselves, other people, and the world in general. And it's the story that we're telling ourselves. It's our life stance. It comprises, for instance, people's attitude towards money, assumptions about their health, and expectations for their child's future. The product of any person's life stance is their overall way of looking at things, whether they tend to be optimistic or pessimistic, cheerful or gloomy, trusting or suspicious, friendly, reserved, brave or timid, generous or stingy. If we maintain a positive life stance, you put yourself in the best position to manage bad experiences and turn them into positive growth. Really cool quote. Life is not the way it's supposed to be. It's the way it is. Let me just repeat that. Life is not the way it's supposed to be. It's the way it is. I was listening to Craig Harper the other day, and he was sharing a coaching conversation he'd had with someone on their new remote process. And he was talking through this person saying, my life hasn't gone to plan. I'm not where I think I would have been, should have been, or could be. It hasn't followed the plan. So the first question, of course, that a good coach would ask, well, tell me about your plan. Life's not the way it's supposed to be, it's the way it is. And what ultimately came from that particular concept was there was no plan. There was no plan. There was no structure. There was no organization around achievement. There was no vision of what this life was going to be for that particular person. So life's not the way it's supposed to be, it's the way it is. The way that you cope with it is what makes the difference. It's the way we cope, it's the way we deal with it that makes a difference. So a positive life stance comes from our own beliefs, and it gives us the best chance to succeed. And it helps me in my role to help others succeed. So when we think about embracing or choosing a positive life stance, it is a choice, by the way. Life is, we accept and we understand that life is filled with good and bad. Some of the good and the bad I cannot control because that's life. Some of the good and the bad will find me. If I have a positive life stance, the good and bad will become better. If I have a negative life stance, the good and bad will become worse. And therefore, I choose a positive life stance. So life is filled with good and bad. I'll just go through these again. Life is filled with good and bad. Some of the good and bad I can't control, and that's life. Some of the good and bad will find me. If I have a positive life stance, the good and bad will become better. If I have a negative life stance, the good and bad will become worse. Therefore, I choose a positive life stance. Embrace and develop your creativity. There's a story about a chicken farmer whose land was flooded nearly every spring. He didn't want to move to give up his farm, but when the water is backed up onto his land and flooded his chicken coop, it is always a struggle to get his chickens to higher ground. And some years he just couldn't move fast enough and hundreds of his chickens would drown. Now, after the worst spring he'd ever experienced and he'd lost his entire flock, he came into the farmhouse and told his wife, I've had it. I can't afford to buy another place. I cannot sell this one. I don't know what to do. And with that, his wife replied, buy ducks. Buy ducks. So chickens are no good with water, but ducks certainly are. So that's a way to look at things in a creative and a positive way. Instead of thinking about, I've always been a chicken farmer, his wife was already moving into, let's become a duck farm. The people who make the most of bad experiences are the ones who find creative ways to meet them. Like the farmer's wife in that particular story, they see possibilities within their problems. You know, we've all heard the saying that life begins at the end of our comfort zone, and I believe that. And I also believe that creativity begins there as well. When we feel the pain of bad experiences, creativity gives you the opportunity to turn that pain into gain. The secret to doing that is to use the energy that comes from either, whether it's adrenaline, whether it's anger, and use it to solve our problems and learn our lessons. And so step number 2 in turning pain into gain, embrace and develop your creativity. And once again, during this particular crisis, we've seen that time and time again. We've seen businesses pivot. We've seen people add in additional revenue streams. We've seen all of this. And so once again, we've embraced creativity to try and solve a problem. Number 3 is embrace the value of bad experiences. John F. Kennedy was once asked how he became a war hero. And with his customary dry wit, he responded, "It was quite easy. Someone sunk my boat." So it was quite easy. Someone sunk my boat. It's always easier to see something positive in a negative experience long after it happens, of course. You know, we hear all these gurus and motivational speakers talking about a bad experience that they've managed to get through, whether it's, and we've heard them. You know, there's always a story there to be shared. And it always seems such a positive experience when they're talking about it from the safety of a stage or in a webinar like this. Absolutely, it's a positive experience. But at the time, it's incredibly difficult to think of it as a positive experience when you're sitting on the edge of Mount Everest, and your Sherpas have fallen to their death, and you're the only one sitting there, and you're in this nook and crevice, and the weather's coming in. It's pretty hard to think, geez, I can make money out of this on the public speaking circuit. You know, so at the time, it's an incredibly difficult time it's difficult. It's a negative experience, and it's difficult to meet that negative experience with a positive mindset. But facing difficulties is inevitable. Learning from them is optional. And once again, we've seen that in this particular crisis. We've seen people that are just going to reopen their businesses potentially and not take the time to learn from it. And the experiences that we're seeing is that our customers have changed, our clients have changed, the landscape has changed. Financially, people have changed. So if we're just reopening a business or resetting our career and just moving on, thinking the world's going to be exactly the same, everyone's experienced a negative experience with COVID. And even the people that are saying COVID has been good for me because I've been able to do that have still had to navigate some change and some negative experiences and deal with stuff incredibly urgently. Embrace the value of bad experiences. Number 4, make good changes from bad experiences. Not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it's faced. And that was a quote from novelist James Baldwin. Let me just say it again. Not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it's faced. So what does that mean for you? Often it takes a bad experience for us to face the changes we need to make in our lives. And a bend in the road is not the end of the road unless, of course, if you fail to make the turn. Okay? When bad experiences create strong feelings with us, we either face the feelings or try to change, or we look to escape, or we look to ignore. It's the old fight or flight instinct. We need to train ourselves to fight for the positive changes. And how do we do that? By remembering and having a focus that our choices will lead us. The choices that we make will either lead to the pain of creating some self-discipline for you to move forward and think of it positively, or we're looking at that pain of regret. It's our choices that will make the change for us, and how we look back on that, whether we look back on it fondly as a learning experience, or whether we look back on it with, my God, I really should have done something. And the final step here is taking responsibility for your life. And this is one of my most valuable things that I talk to people about, but it's often one of the most missed things that I share with people. The concept of personal responsibility. And once again, we see this time and time and time again, and during the crisis that we faced with the COVID-19, we've seen it time and time and time again. We've seen people judging others. We've seen people bemoaning the fact that there's more than 4 or 6 or whatever the designated number is in an aisle in a supermarket. With the concept of physical distancing, with the concept of social distancing, sits side by side with the concept of personal responsibility. And guess what? If there are people in an aisle and there were 6 of them instead of the designated 4, don't go in that aisle. It becomes pretty simple when it's our own personal responsibility. If you're looking at numbers in a park or numbers at a shopping centre and feeling that people are ignoring the health advice, stay at home. And that's our personal choice. Don't judge others when you're actually like the person in the supermarket or the person at the shopping centre saying there's people everywhere, and they're not. You're part of the people everywhere. You're part of it. You're there. And I'm sure that they'd be able to turn around and talk about, I was just getting essential stuff. Yeah, okay. Take responsibility for your life. We need to recognize that our circumstances don't define us. They are outside of us, and they need not negatively impact values and standards. At the same time, we must take responsibility for our lives. So where we've come from doesn't define us. Our mistakes in the past don't define us. But we take responsibility for our life and the choices that we have made. Many people avoid or overcome bad experiences by avoiding the label of victim. And they take responsibility for moving forward. So even things outside of our control, if we believe we're a victim, we're not going to face that with any sort of positivity. What happened to me is the worst thing in the world, and I'll never be free of it. That's the way some people think. What happened to me is the worst thing in the world, and I'll never be free of it. But people that utilize the concept of turning pain into gain think differently. They may say to themselves, what happened to me was pretty bad, but other people are worse off. Other people aren't giving up. Other people aren't wallowing in self-pity. Other people aren't asking, why me? And that's one of the real keys here in respect of working through or turning pain into gain. Because it is a superpower that we all possess. We just need to take the personal responsibility to do that. So when we look at the content that we've just delivered here in a leadership roundtable, we then really take some opportunity to work through and have some facilitated discussion in and around that. So potentially what would have happened during that particular leadership roundtable would have been, we would have stopped along the way and asked some questions. And we would have had discussion in between the content, in between whether it was me talking it through or whether it's a video or whether it's a book that we were masterminding. We would then talk through some of that. So as part of this one, there was actually an assess your attitude task, and it enabled the leaders at that particular group to work through a series of questions and to give themselves a self-rating. There was also an opportunity to talk through some of the pain that they had experienced in their own life and being able to utilize that as part of a discussion piece, as part of that whole process of them taking what they've just learned and evaluating how they responded. And then finally, we would have really looked to, okay, what's some of the insights from today that can now form part of your toolkit, that now form part of whether it's a business toolkit or whether it's a leadership career toolkit. What have you learned today that you don't want to lose? And I think that that's really, really important. So I hope that you've enjoyed going through this process today. Greater growth through pain management. It's one of the leadership topics that I utilize and fulfill in some of my leadership roundtables, especially relevant in today's world with the COVID-19 crisis, and especially relevant now that we're moving into a more positive stages where in many countries, and I know in Australia, we've really seemingly broken the back of any potential modelling that was being done around the virus, and we're now looking to reopen, which is an absolutely positive thing to be doing. So now is the time for us to be really refreshing the pain that we've experienced during that particular time and how we can use that as a springboard into growth. Now, I am holding a mastermind group. It starts June 3, so we've got a couple of weeks for you to sign up. It is $90 or $99 with GST, so if you can claim GST, it'll be $90. If you can't claim GST, well, it's $99. So, and that gives you 8 sessions going through a mastermind process. Now, we'll be listening to some videos from John in relation to that, from a virtual summit that John conducted for his leadership coaches that he has, and there's over 12,000 of them in the world. I'm really honored and proud to be one of those. So the mastermind group is called From Adversity to Advantage, and it really works and builds around taking us from fear to hope and then really working deeply into the area of perspective so that we can really look at things in a different way. There is a link in the comments of this Facebook Live video where you can click on that, find out more about it. There'll be 8 sessions over the course of a month, so we will complete the 8 sessions within a month so that when, all intents and purposes, we're reopening the world, the economy in around July, and it will give you a really good springboard into that to take what we've learnt or how we've grown through this crisis period and how we can use that to launch us to the next level and to be able to be a step ahead of the curve. So we've taken that corner. The crisis has thrown us a huge spanner in the works, and we're going to use that spanner to actually rejig, reshape, reset, refresh, and re-energize, and ultimately recover. Just click on the link. If you've got any questions, just please feel free to ask me via my Facebook page or on my website at thinkandgrowbusiness.com.au. I hope that you found today incredibly valuable. We'll talk soon. Bye.